Welcome to the Can Report. Today we sit down with firefighter Sam Hess. Sam has taken an active role in peer support services. We discuss Sam's background before he became a firefighter and some of the life experiences that he had leading up to being the person that he is. This episode is pretty heavy. We discuss topics like substance abuse and suicide. We don't want to scare you off, but be aware that we all have battles to fight. We hope you enjoy. We'll get started. With me today is Sam Hess. Sam, appreciate you for coming on to the show.
Welcome, thank you.
Let's start off, we'll start them all off the same way. We'll talk about who you are, where you're from, and all the experiences that got you to this point.
Oh man, who I'm at, where I'm from, I feel like this is going to turn into a remake of Joe Dirt. So we won't go too deep in depth with that. My name's Sam Hess. I'm originally from outside of Fort Worth, Texas. I spent my entire childhood moving around the United States. Not because my family was in the military, but because they trained racehorses, obviously. I somehow settled down in Iowa. Actually, my dad was from Iowa, so ended up in Iowa, moved around some more, and came here from being in the Army for 4 years. Got hired on the fire department. So I've been with Waterloo Fire Rescue since 2008. Just hit year number 14. Been a paramedic since 2010, so 12 years of doing that, and I'm happy to be here today.
Your parents raised racehorses, like Kentucky Derby type racehorses, or chariot races? What kind of races did they do?
Actually, my dad had done some chariot racing in his earlier days, but no, we're into horse racing. So, but Kentucky Derby-wise, there's kind of a caste system in horse racing. So you're either like Kentucky Derby $1 million horses, or you're like trying to win a race so you can put food on the table. We happen to be on the lower end of that spectrum, which was fine. I wouldn't trade it for anything. My childhood was pretty incredible. I can't remember how many states we lived in, but my parents both had good jobs. My mom was from New York. My dad was from Iowa, and of course they met on a horse farm in Texas.
As one does.
As one does. That's just the way it works. My mom was a medical secretary for a cardiologist, and my dad had a good job at a conveyor company, and they decided that they'd rather do what they loved than do what paid well, and I can't blame them for that. So we spent our childhood, me and my brother, moving around, lived in all kinds of places, from Texas to Minnesota, from Wyoming to New Jersey. Had some pretty fun experiences, some interesting experiences that most kids never experience. Lived in a 10-foot by 10-foot room with 3 other people in Ohio, and walked through the snow to go to the bathroom, and lived in a school bus for a few years with no electricity or running water. But I wouldn't trade it for anything. It made the Army easy.
So, I'm sure it did.
Yeah, I got 3 hot meals a day,
right.
So it's hard to complain. But no, it was a good childhood, and my parents, when we got up to around 11, 12 years old, decided that they wanted to settle down somewhere where we could go to school in one place finally. I think the shortest time we were enrolled in a school was 2 weeks when we went to school in New Mexico. Mm-hmm. So it was a lot of moving. Fortunately, my brother's really smart, so he never had any issues. I did okay.
Yeah.
But we settled down in Wellsburg, which is about 30 miles west of here. It's a great community, and went to high school there. And my dad, being from Iowa, knew that like Iowans are just down-to-earth, good people, and want us a place where we get a good education, a good community. And so we ended up here. I went to Kirkwood about a year after high school, and I feel like I'm about to get voluntold for something for communications, media, and public relations. Mm-hmm. Because they had a face for radio.
That is dynamite information that I needed to know, Sam.
I did, but I was a dropout. I did not graduate.
I didn't.
And it was so long ago. I don't remember. But yep, I went to Kirkwood for about a year and a half. Went through some stuff there. My life kind of flipped upside down, and ended up dropping out of school. And went to Denver, Colorado, not Denver, Iowa, and then Kansas City, and ended up back in Iowa. And then I joined the Army, and ended up here after that. So
So how old were you when you joined the Army?
I was 23.
23.
was
So a little
23.
bit late, honestly.
Yep. I was in Kansas City on September 11th. Blue clear sky, and I remember I was out running a piece of heavy equipment and saw the trails from the airplanes in the sky in a perfect circle, and joked around with my buddy. I said, those guys don't know where they're going. And we went back to the shop to go on break and realized what had happened. And I don't remember how long later it was. I remember hearing an ad on in the tractor I was riding in that was looking for Navy chaplains. And I felt like this feeling like I was supposed to do something about that, and then I laughed it off, and I was like, God, you know I can't swim, so this is not going to go well if you want me to be a Navy chaplain. But it ended up that calling didn't go away, and then so 2 weeks after the war started in 2003, much to my mother's demise, I went into the recruiting station and joined the Army to be a chaplain assistant.
What's a chaplain's assistant do?
I like to refer to it as being a combat janitor. I cleaned a lot of bathrooms. But basically, a chaplain assistant job carries a few forms. So basically, your job is to facilitate religious accommodation for all the people in your group. In my instance, it was a battalion. So we had about 420 soldiers. So regardless of their religion, we would help. My job was to help them find someone that could help them get spiritual direction. And that came down to a lot of, not necessarily spiritual direction, but like things like mental health counseling, stuff like that, people that needed help in any way. And then on deployment, chaplains, because of the Geneva Convention, are unarmed. So we're actually their bodyguard in combat. So, which was nice because my chaplain was always up for me going to the range to shoot more.
Right.
Because it was good for him.
Yeah, heck yeah. All the practice you want, kid.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so I actually worked with a Catholic priest. They were in short supply. So we had 2 Catholic priests covering all of the area around Baghdad in the year I was deployed. So me and the priest that was assigned to our battalion, not only did we do our best to take care of our battalion, but we flew all around Baghdad. I flew about 27,000 miles that year. So we would, usually it was Friday or Saturday, we would start our tour, and we would get on a Black Hawk or a Chinook, fly to another base. I would set up Mass while he talked to all the Catholics that came to the Mass. He would do Mass. He would talk to everyone. I would pack up. I'd grab him by the collar, and we'd hop on the helicopter, and we'd do that all weekend. And that was my year. So plus trying to take care of the people in our own battalion.
Awesome. So you did 4 years?
4 years. Yep. 3 in Fort Hood, Texas, and 1 overseas in Iraq. So
You're married?
yes,
Happily.
happily married.
She seems happy, anyway.
I don't know how, but she's she's very gracious.
Where'd you meet?
So there's an argument as whether it was before I deployed or on mid-tour leave.
What's her side?
I can't remember. I think I blocked her out. But we met. She worked at a coffee shop in Cedar Falls. I came back. I believe it was on mid-tour leave. She says I think it was before I deployed. Either way, we met in that coffee shop. My brother took me in there and introduced me to this girl who was working at this coffee shop. And first thing I said to her was, he said, "This is my brother Sam, and my brother's older than me, but I'm about a foot taller than he is." So I said, "Yep, we're twins." And then she kind of rolled her eyes at me, and that's how we met.
Oh.
So we kept in touch throughout deployment. She was in complete denial that some guy was emailing her from overseas, but we came back. She must have fell and hit her head because she started dating me, and we dated long distance for about 9 months until my time was done in the Army, and then I moved up here. So
Awesome.
yeah.
So it's basically, we have Sarah to thank that you're with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, I never thought I'd end up back in Iowa. I love it here, don't get me wrong, but I never really thought like Iowa's where I'm going to stay at. So
For a Fort Worth kid, it gets a little chilly in the wintertime.
it does. I am a tropical man, but I've learned to adapt.
Awesome. The main focus we have you here today for is we're going to talk about mental health. You've taken a big step in getting mental health to lose some of that stigma, at least for Waterloo anyway. And we talked a little bit about it. Sounds like these things started to creep into your life earlier, back in the military, possibly even beforehand. Yep. Mental health, while slowly losing that stigma of weakness is difficult for fires to openly talk about. As the stigma lessens, our ability to talk about the issue lessening as well?
Yes, I think it's getting better. And so one of the things we have to address is that it's happening. We, in our profession, are profession of statistics. So to not look at mental health as an issue in the fire service is ridiculous. It's like as ridiculous as not looking at cardiovascular health. If you know that at work that over half your people are dying from cardiovascular accidents or heart attacks, you don't address the health aspect, you're completely denying the facts on that. No different than like statistics are just kind of what we do. Like we're always weighing risks and benefits and this and that. I walked into the library today and first thing I remembered is 85% of library fires are arsons. Like statistics are everywhere in what we do. So one of the things can I go back to kind of like my story on this as to how I got to do
platform.
So my thing was, I grew up in, I'm self-abusing, if you will, as far as what I think about myself. I don't know what made me that way. Maybe it was my childhood. Who knows what. But when I was in college, I got heavy into alcohol, and I reached a point to where I was staying in my apartment one day, and I decided I was either going to figure out there was more to live in or I was going to kill myself. And by the grace of God, he turned my life around completely upside down that night. So part of that to me is knowing that I was given the gift of getting to that point and getting through it. Moving on from that, my time in the military, we lost 3 people in the war. I know of at least 4 that we lost to suicide. And I'm sure that, unfortunately, there's probably been more. My first encounter with losing somebody in our battalion was our senior ranking enlisted member who killed himself. We had to break into his apartment and found him there. That was my first experience in that role, and then dealing with the loss that the family had and the loss of the family in our squadron, and learning how to work through that. So coming on the fire department, that was part of my background, my own history, and then in my time in the military, we dealt with a lot of people that had mental health issues in the military, and then coming back from that and all the stuff that comes along with that. And then I got on the fire department, and everything was going fine. And then when Greg Freshwater was killed in an accident, I was the lead medic on that call and got done with it. And besides the pain of losing a really good friend, a guy that was like a little brother to me, and having those arguments with myself, whether like part of it was my fault or not, or if I could have done more, or whatever. I thought I was fine, and then I don't know how many months it was later, I started having flashbacks in the ambulance, where I'd go to start an IV on someone, and all of a sudden I was in the back of the ambulance with Greg again, and I had no clue what was going on. I didn't know if I could do this job anymore. That was in 2018. I was at the point where I thought, I'm either going to have to get help and get this squared away, or I'm going to have to quit and go do something else. Where one day I just came home from work and told my wife I didn't know if I could come to work anymore. So, and once again in my life, I hit another spot where God pulled me out of it. I had some great people who came alongside me and helped me. And seeing that gift given to me and seeing how people help me through it leads me to think it would be ridiculous for me not to be a part of helping everybody to get that help if they need it. So I think the smartest thing I did, and I don't do a lot of smart things, he's my boss. If anyone wants to know, he knows that. the smartest thing I did is during that time period when I was really struggling, I wasn't suicidal in this deal after Greg. I was just, like, didn't know what was going on. I was confused whether I could do this anymore without, like, crushing my mind. Was when people would ask me if I was okay, I'd say no. And a lot of that was just talking through the same stuff going through my head over and over again with people, and them not running away, or being like, yeah, we don't want you anymore. Guys like Mark Mahood, who was way more instrumental in me than starting this, showing up at my house and being like, you all right? Nope. What's going on? I'd talk it over with him. He didn't say, yeah, we don't want you anymore. You're the weak link. We don't want you to be part of the team anymore. Rather, like, hey, let's get you better so you can get back in. So that's how it started for me. And that's part of breaking the stigma.
100%.
Yep.
There's a very real concept of responder guilt.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how long you were on the ambulance. I was on the ambulance for 5 years.
Yeah.
Every code we ran, every dead body call that was a cardiac arrest that ended up as a dead body, you feel guilt for. You can't help it. There could have been the 135-year-old chain-smoking alcoholic that coded, and you still feel a bit of guilt because
Absolutely.
you couldn't do what you could do.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that this is healing you as well by being able to do these things? So I guess the example I use is the best way I can learn a firefighting technique is by training and then teaching that technique.
Yep.
Do you feel that that's the case for you as well?
The more I get into mental health stuff, the more I think that people that go into the mental health field, a lot of them are there because they've been working on fixing their own problems, or have stuff that they want to learn how to heal themselves, and then they feel like they want to be able to push that to other people. Yeah, I think that I think there's a lot of truth in that, is that teaching it helps me. There's so many things I've learned to teach classes for our department that I would realize and be like, oh, yep, that was me. Yep, that's totally normal. Like, that happens all the time, where I used to think that it was like just something that happened to me. So I was the weird one, or one that had this issue. And the more you learn, the more you realize like how normal this kind of stuff is, that for people that experience post-traumatic stress. So yeah, it's been incredibly helpful for me, and hopefully helpful to other people.
What are some of the signs you look for to gauge someone's mental health or unhealthiness, that maybe you'd want to do that a little bit extra of a reach out? You're a person that's very approachable, as is Mark, but sometimes, because we don't like to talk about our own weaknesses as we see them weaknesses, we don't want to bring them up. So you need to be the one to kind of make that first move. What are some of the signs you look for?
Honestly, now that you mention it, the thing I would say most in a profession like we have, and I just finished a book called Warrior by Dr. Shauna Springer, and thinking back through what she said, in a profession like ours, same as in the military, you go in, they take you from who you were, you prove yourself to be part of the group, like, and you establish your role, like, as part of this group that keeps each other alive and keeps other people alive, and you hang on. You're like links in a chain. The thing is, when you become, like I said, if you become like, or at least you feel like you've become the weak link, your options are either to say, hey, like, I'm about to break, I need help so I can be part of it, or it's to start distancing yourself. And I think that's the biggest thing you see in what we do, is people setting themselves apart from the rest of the group, because they don't want other people to see, like, that they're broken. When it turns out we're all, like, the reason that we can do what we do is because we're all a little broken, and the way that we can do what we can is because we cover each other's weak spots.
Right.
That's the way it should be. But this crazy cycle happens in the military, with veterans, with firefighters, police. suicide rates are incredibly high too, is that we start to think because we have a problem, if we tell other people we have a problem, they're going to think we're weak and we're going to kick them out of the tribe. So we separate ourselves so people can't see it, like can't see how messed up we are. And then as we separate ourselves out, it's like you're a car guy. Are you like a NASCAR guy?
Kind of whatever's available.
You know, they're driving on the track and they're drafting. Like when one's behind the other,
Right.
they push each other along.
Yep.
Like once they pull out of the pack, they just lose steam. And if somebody doesn't pull in behind them, they just fall out of the race, you know?
Right.
And I think that's what a lot of people do is because they don't, like we have this weird thing, we think like we're going to, like our mental health like is infectious, like it's going to rub off on other people. We don't want other people to see it. We don't want other people to know that we're suffering. So we don't want to be kicked out of the pack, but we separate from the pack. And then they just lose all their steam, like, and don't feel like they're part of the group anymore. And that perpetuates more mental health issues when you don't have people to support you. And you try and fix it yourself so you can jump back in, but it just doesn't work that way. And when it comes to stuff like suicide, what happens is, you know, you've been on calls before where patients who actually need you, someone in their family calls and you get there and they're having a heart attack and they don't want to go to the hospital. I sat out a guy's front steps once and literally told him I was going to wait till he went unconscious and then take him to the hospital because we knew exactly what was going on with him. He just refused to get help, right? And it like crushes your soul that you've worked so hard to be so good at what you do and someone won't let you help them. And so people separate themselves out of the group because they don't want to be seen as weak. We as a group generally see ourselves as people who want to help other people who are suffering. So if they get to the point where they commit suicide, not only did they feel like nobody cared about them, but the people who are there who genuinely do what they do to help people see themselves as failures, just like that 135-year-old woman that, like, I would have done anything for you. All you had to do was ask, but you never said anything. And that perpetuates a whole nother cycle of, like, of suffering. Like, I can't believe that they wouldn't trust me enough to be someone that they could come to. And that just makes things, like, perpetually worse. So...
Right, and I think that's one of the best things about you and Mark Mahood being the two that ramrod our peer support group. Your core is very similar. You both want to help. We all are in this same gig together. However, to have a conversation with you is entirely different than having a conversation with Mark.
It is. Yeah.
There would be 1,000 bleeps in this podcast if I was talking with Mark.
Yeah.
The message would be the same,
right?
But it's brought about differently.
Absolutely.
And we have to be able to hear it in different voices, different ways, before it gets through our thick skulls sometimes. Moving on with that a little bit, I had a colleague, another firefighter, mention to me one time that every first responder eventually leaves this career with PTSD of some degree. Do you believe that? Is it a sliding scale?
So... You've been through my classes before. I think that I was pushing for a long time, like going in this job and thinking that you're not going to have stuff affect your mental health is like walking into the ocean and being like, I'm going to be the first person who doesn't get wet. Like, it's going to happen. That's true. I think one of the things that Dr. Springer said in her book that we have to remember is, although we're the people that are absolutely going to be affected by things that we see, that's 100% true. Like, we will experience post-traumatic stress because we experience so much trauma. What did this guy say? I was reading this white paper from the Ruderman Foundation that said the average number of events, traumatic events witnessed in a career by a police officer was 188 of traumatic events. Like, most people will see like maybe a handful in their life, maybe less, you know. And us in a career, it's hundreds. We don't think that necessarily affects us. Every time you see one, it does have an impact on your brain. No different than because your brain's an organ, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's like saying that like every donut you eat doesn't have a little effect on your pancreas. Like it's just the way,
Right.
it's the way the body works.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as like post-traumatic stress disorder is a defined disorder that meets certain like criteria. So disorder-wise, I can't say, but yes, there is absolutely no way that you can't have, I mean, it's post-traumatic stress, like it's stress after you experience something traumatic. It's impossible not to have that. But one of the things Dr. Springer said was, although we say that about veterans, police officers, firefighters, we're kind of, when we only say that part, we're selling that group as damaged goods. What she said is, although we're the most prone to be exposed to that stuff, we're also the people that are best suited to deal with it, right? No different than saying a group of special forces guys are the most likely group of people to get attacked. Yeah, they are, because they're in a very like dangerous situation on purpose, right? Mm-hmm. They're also the most likely people to be able to shoot their way out of it. So although we have the most exposure, we also have the same mindset, if we use it appropriately, to come out of it ahead, which I think I read a report that between 25 and 30% of millennials say that they don't have any real friends, right? Mm-hmm. Think about it. Like, if something bad happens to you or your family member or whatever, you'll have people show up at your house that don't even like you from the fire department, right? To help you out.
Right.
Like, there are people out there that have literally no one. Mm-hmm. Like, we have a huge support group, right? That we're so deep in that we don't even think about the fact that if your wife gets sick or your kid gets hurt or you break your arm, that someone's going to show up at your door, just like Mark did at mine. I came home one day, Mark's truck was in my driveway. He was at my house back when this all happened, checking in with Sarah. Hey, are you okay? Mm-hmm. Say, I'm okay. What do you need? He has 1,000 things to do. He has a family. He works in the fire department. He's a farmer, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
We have each other. So we might be the most exposed, but we also have like the best support system if we use it. We have access to amazing mental health care, especially in this area. There's a ton of good mental health care providers. Like, we are people that look at very challenging situations and tackle them head on all the time. It's just a matter of refocusing and saying, like, all right, the health of my brain is the thing that I need to focus on right now. And I'm going to freaking go in there and take care of it until things get better. Just like we walk up to a house that's on fire and we say, all right, this is an incredibly big problem, but I got the people and the resources I need, and I'm going to go in and we're going to deal with it until this thing gets out.
Talk a little bit about the peer support system that you and Mark have implemented, created, took over. In particular, a little bit of the nuts and bolts to it. Hopefully, we've got other departments that'll listen to this podcast, think, hey, Sam's got it going on. Sam gets it.
Ooh, I don't know.
We're probably going to hire Sam big money to come in and talk to us.
No.
But we need to get something started. How do they get started as a department?
Mark got this whole ball rolling, and we have, a handful of peer support people besides me and Mark on the department, do a great job. But we got started. Mark said, hey, this is something we really need to work on. And we went to the Peer Support Foundation, holds classes, before COVID, annually in Des Moines. And we went down there. We've gone down, I think, twice now for classes. And the first thing to do is the first speaker usually pops up some slide that talks about what post-traumatic stress symptoms look like. And every firefighter and police officer in the room looks at the screen and goes, excuse me, like, you're all guilty.
Yeah.
But part of that was normalizing, like seeing like, oh, like we're all in this together. And then starting to learn like, that we all share this collective problem, and that we have these people that help share like collective solutions. And basically peer support is in the middle as a way of saying like, hey, like what you're experiencing is not okay, but it's normal. Like, and we have these people who are very well equipped to deal with your problem. Can I help you? Can I help you get there? So Dr. Springer said that in her book, like, we trust people that other people like us trust. So in other words, if I have a problem with my van and I know you don't say anything good about anyone unless they're like the best at what they do, right? Mm-hmm. And I come to you and say, I have this problem with my van. And you say, oh, there's this guy in whereversville who will fix it and does an amazing job and whatever. Like, you should go to him. That's the equivalent of peer support. Like, hey, you are like me, and I trust this person. I think that you can trust this person with your problem, that they'll help you fix it. That's what peer support is. And a big part of peer support is just being able to go to somebody, and we don't try and fix anybody. Like, I've had people come to me, and we sat down in my backyard, and they just told me what they went through. And you know what? They didn't make me sick, and I didn't run away, and I didn't go tell on anybody, right? Mm-hmm. They just sat there and listened. And when they got done, guess what? Their mind fixed itself.
Right. Talking it through is huge.
Yeah. That's why dogs are awesome. Mm-hmm. You know that?
Yeah. Well,
you ever read the statistics on people with dogs and how much lower their like depression and anxiety is?
I've not read any documentation.
It's pretty incredible. But you know what the thing about a dog is? Mm-hmm. You have a terrible day, right? You can be a complete jerk or totally depressed or whatever. You can sit down with that dog and pet it. You can talk to it if you want. I'm not going to deny. It's mm-hmm. happened before. You know what it does? It's still your best friend. It still just hangs out there, and it doesn't leave you, right? Because they're loyal. They're not like, oh, you're totally weird. I can't be with you right now. They're just like, all right, mm-hmm. we're still best friends. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what peer support is. Like, hey, like, you're going to be all right. I'm not leaving you. Still got your back.
I just read an article, too, on the growing trend of the return of Firehouse dogs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Going from the Dalmatians that ran along ran along the horses to basically a emotional support animal for the entire department.
Yep. I bring my dog into the station every once in a while if mm-hmm. I'm on a day off, and you can literally tell the change in the mood when that dog walks in the door.
From everyone.
Right. Absolutely.
So I believe dogs should be at least 30 pounds because otherwise they're cats and cats are worthless. However, even when someone brings those dogs in, it's still a better day.
Yeah, it is.
It's not a 30-pound dog, but our training officer, Dave Jensen, has a Mastiff.
Oh, my goodness.
And his name's Groot, and he stopped by the station one day. Best day ever.
Ever, absolutely.
And it was just, he didn't do anything special. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He just sat there when you wanted to pet him, and you petted him.
Yeah.
We need those outlets.
Yeah, absolutely.
In this job.
And I'm not saying everyone should have a dog, but the concept behind it,
right? Of
like, you know what, you can just be you around me, and I'm mm-hmm. not scared. Like, you're not going to make me sick. It's okay. Like, we're still in this together. Mm-hmm. It's such a huge, huge thing.
Peer can mean a lot of different things. So, one of the things I've noticed in the 2 years that I've become a battalion chief is peers has taken a different term. You can look at peers as a rank issue where now instead of 18 lieutenants, there's 3 battalion chiefs.
Right.
I lean more almost on the concept of peers being generationally the same aged individuals, about the same amount of time on the job. So you would be considered my peer because I think you were on the very next list that got hired after mine.
Okay.
And the group before mine we're all in that same kind of peer area. I know you're quite a few years younger than I am, but we fall into that peer category that way. Uh-huh. So I don't want people to think peer has to be some all-encompassing of every firefighter as your peer.
Right.
It doesn't really work that way. It can, I feel, but I think every individual sets up their own peer support group.
Yeah, we all determine how tight our circle is,
right?
And
absolutely.
what it looks like.
Way to say it.
Like for me, For me, mostly it's our shift, because I've spent all but a month of my 14 years on the same shift. So I have a relationship with, besides, a lot of the newer guys, I've been with the same group for so long, and we've worked like through all this stuff, like that's kind of that's my group. You know what I mean? So I feel comfortable with most of them, but everybody's got to determine like how, and we all have like our like tight group and then like a little bit wider group, but you don't want to go like airing your stuff out with everyone like that,
Right.
and it's it can be unhealthy too. But you do need like a tight group of people that you can just lay all your laundry out, and they're like, all right, let's fix this crap.
Yep.
And a little bit bigger group that's like, I don't know what's going on, but something's going on. You know what? Like, just like if you get, strain your back at work, like, hey, like, I know you got something going on right now. Like, let me pick the cot up. It's the same sort of deal. Like, I don't have to know what it all is.
Right.
But I got your back. Like, until you get better,
Right.
we'll help support you.
Yeah, and I think that mental aspect that you have support is huge.
Yeah.
To stay healthy, or as healthy as we can stay.
Because it looks so different. We treat mental health so much different than like the rest of your body health. It's like dental care. Like, it's medical care, but like it's its own classification. Like, you don't say like, I'm going to the doctor today. What are they doing? Well, they're cleaning, like they're checking my teeth. Like, you're going to a dentist.
Right.
Like, mental health is its own entity. The brain's still an organ.
Right.
It's the most complicated thing on the planet. Like, so it's confusing, and the way it shows symptoms and everything is so different than the rest of your body. But in the end, it's still an organ. Like, health is health.
Right.
So if you got someone's got a mental health problem, it's no different than they slam their finger, doing something on the fire ground. Like, hey, like, they're a little broken up right now. Like, what's the thing that's going to get you better, and how can we support you while you're healing? It's the same thing.
Right.
We just don't look at it that way. But we're getting there. That's part of breaking the stigma.
Absolutely. Getting close to closing time here.
Yeah.
What do you do to stay mentally healthy? What do you do to stay physically healthy?
I work out a lot.
You probably eat a few sandwiches. Some peanut butter sandwiches wouldn't kill you, Sam. I'm just saying.
I am the heaviest I've ever been right now, but thanks for not noticing. Not bad weight. I exercise a lot. Meditation has been helpful, learning about that, and they're actually pretty closely tied to each other as far as the impact that they have on your body, as in a way of telling your brain that, like, you're not in the past, you're not in the future right now, like, you're just right here, right now, has been really helpful for me. Like, when I get, like, post the whole, like, flashback stuff, even when that got better, I dealt with a lot of anxiety, which, of course, was never diagnosed. Like, I never went and saw anyone about it, but, like, feeling really anxious. I'm one of those kinds of people that is incredibly hard on myself about every little mistake that I make. But it got, like, almost out of hand. So, meditation and exercise has been helpful for me. They're also helpful for me, like, coming off of shift, helped me reset, which has been shown, like, coming out of a hypervigilant state. They say, your wife is here now. Can I ask her a question? Is that safe?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's this thing we learned about, talk about normalizing stuff, called like this hypervigilance curve thing, that when we go to work, we hit this deal where we're, like, hypervigilant for 24 hours. Cops do it for 8 or 10 or whatever, right? And you go and you're thinking about everything. Like, you probably spent all night, whether you were awake or not, thinking about taking care of 70,000 people and keeping, like, 27 people safe, and where they all were, and this or that, and where everything was on the battalion chief's car. And, like, we can't go to work and put something in the spices in the wrong place in the cabinet without being chastised because it's wrong, like, because it's supposed to be 2 inches to the right. Like, we ride this thing of, like, if you don't do everything and pay attention to everything, it can get you killed or someone killed, or like you're not going to serve your community well, and like the 100-and-something-year-old lady could die. And like I tell people that going on a call in the middle of the night is like someone shaking you out of bed, and in 2 minutes you're taking a biology test, and if you fail, somebody dies. Like your brain is at that level for 24 hours. About this time of day, it's about 9 o'clock in the morning, well, about 8 o'clock in the morning, you come off of that, and about the time you get home, your brain takes a nosedive and just goes like this. And by the time you get home, generally, or within a half hour, your brain is so exhausted from doing that you don't want to make a single decision. 0 decisions. Unfortunately, for firefighters, that's generally about the time that their spouse is thinking about all the things that they've been putting together over the last 24 hours that they wanted to talk to you about, decisions you want to make, and things like that. And there's this collision that happens about 8:15 a.m. Every day people get off shift where your brain is timed out. You go to hypovigilance, where you just want to sit there and you could stare at a wall for like a half hour. Do you ever feel that?
I've noticed on times that have been stressful days, my drive home will be complete silence. No radio, no podcasts, no books on tape, anything. Just be silent. Let me drive home. Let me, in the back of my brain, process it without thinking about processing it. And hopefully, by the time I get home, I'm a little bit better on that. But
you can handle 0 stimulation, though.
Right.
Right.
It's everything to drive safely, properly home, and not cuss out the guy in front of me because his blinkers still on.
Right. Right. So that experience is where a lot of understanding, like this is, it's not an excuse to be mean to your spouse, but it's normal to bottom out and get home and be like, hey, we've got this, this, and this going on tonight. What do you want to do for dinner? Like, I don't care. I don't care. I don't know. Have you ever experienced that?
Oh, definitely. And, just getting better at, it helps too. You get home at 8 o'clock or whatever when, if you have kids at home, they're heading off to school, spouse is heading off to work likely. So you have that home alone kind of time to just, do your own thing, be quiet, have a quiet house or whatever. But definitely getting more understanding on, you get home and you still have all of that going on in your mind. So you're exhausted mentally, you're exhausted physically, but yet it's not sleep time. And your body knows that. It's not time to sleep, but just that time to lay down and just do nothing.
Yeah. So it's not an excuse for him to come home and like kick the dog, yell at you or whatever. But once you realize that stuff like this is normal, like physiological process, there's a couple things you can do. One, you two can work out a way to say, like, hey, I know you have a list of things you want me to do or decisions I need to make. Can you like write it down, put it in a drawer, and once I pull out of the slump, like I'll get it out and take care of it? Or like whatever works for you guys, so you're not like, I need you to make 20 decisions and I can't even decide what shoe I want to tie first at the same time, which leads to a lot of issues. And you learn that sometimes a commute helps, but like 15 to 30 minutes of really light exercise can actually help pull you up to like neutral again.
Right.
So I usually go home, I say hi, like I panic when I walk in the house if anything's messy, because my brain still thinks if anything's out of place, someone's going to die. I pull myself together, everybody goes to school, and then I go to the gym. And that's where I rearrange my brain, and by the time I get home, everything's cool again.
Yeah, I think I'm blessed with the spouse I have that I think I'm pretty positive on days I can come home, I either throw off a certain vibe or I have a certain look, and it's, well, why don't you go take a nap?
Right.
And it's not, very rarely do I ever sleep, but it's that silent reset time where I can go from that hypervigilance and completely drop back down and then start to work back up on my own speed.
Yep.
Where I can come back out and, yeah, it feels like I slept 8 hours because it's that much of a refreshment.
Yeah.
to be able to do that.
Yeah, that one guy called it the magic chair, where you just go home and sit in a chair and stare at the wall. TV wouldn't even have to be on, but literally it's just your brain saying, I'm completely exhausted and I can't do anything right now. And that's normal. But the question is, okay, if this is a normal process, people need to know that that's normal, and then they need to work out what works for them on how to deal with it. And that there's so many things like that are natural responses that firefighters and their spouses don't know, that you can see. Like, you didn't need someone to tell you that to know that that's what it was. You've learned to deal with it through all these years.
But it's taken a long time to learn that, because that's something, like you said, you step back and you don't talk about that. You don't want to admit, hey, I had a really rough night. Hey, I saw a lot of bad things at work. You don't want to admit that to your spouse.
Right. Yeah.
So it takes a long time, and it takes that openness and that honest communication between each other to be able to communicate that.
Yep.
Maybe it's the same way in the Hess house as it is in the Beck house, where, hey, honey, glad you're home. How was your night? Good.
Yeah. It didn't matter.
Didn't matter.
You could have seen 20 people die,
Yeah.
and you'd say good, because you don't want your family to have to deal with that.
Exactly.
That's the problem. One of the things I have, I want my kids to understand what it's like to be a poor kid that lived with no electricity or running water, but I don't want them to have to experience it.
Right.
That's not fair to them. You want, like, I go home. You go home to her, and you want to understand that, like, you experienced, like, 8 traumatic things last night and were completely stressed out, looking over people like me so I can go home to my wife. But you don't want her to you want her to understand it, but you don't want to have her experience that.
Right.
Like, I don't go home and tell my wife the things I've seen at work.
No.
I wouldn't want her to know. Like, it was bad. Like, so, yeah, it's really like this strange thing. Like, you want to respect their safety, and at the same time, you want them to know, like, how bad it hurts. So I don't know the perfect answer to that, but I think every couple's got to be aware of it, and then be able to work through it in a way that's healthy.
And that's part of the beauty of our job as well, and the group that we work with is, how was your night? Great, good, whatever. 3 days later, I've processed it because she's given me the time.
Yep.
And then I go talk to other people that experienced it with me, and we can work it through an entirely different way, an entirely different level, that hopefully can keep us healthy that way, that we see we're all in it together.
I would say that, 87.2% of all statistics are made up on the spot. I just made that up. But I would say that over 90% of peer support is unofficial. That thing when you get back from a call in the morning or after it's over, and you're like, dude, that was absolutely the worst thing I've ever seen in my life, and you talk through what you saw, that is literally like being able to verbally express what you've seen is so important to your brain being able to file it away in a healthy way, that peer support is like mental health in a way is essentially built in to what we do, because we talk about everything, which is a way that we talk through everything. But like I said, if someone's like gets hung up like I did and then doesn't say anything, and then they separate themselves out and never talk about it, your brain isn't working through that process of healing itself.
Right. Sam, is there anything else you want to bring up? We're kind of getting close to the end of our time here.
No, I think it's just a really important thing. I just listened to a podcast. Have you ever heard of Dakota Meyer? He was a medal. So he was a Marine Medal of Honor recipient. As I was listening to him, he was on Joe Rogan's podcast. They're interviewing him, and listening to him. He's a firefighter now, so Medal of Honor recipient. He said that he's seen more things in the fire department than he ever saw in combat. And him talking through, I've never met him. He seems like a incredible guy. We share the same, like, I think, mental attitude where, like, we beat ourselves up over every little thing we do wrong. Like, it sounded so familiar to me, and him walking through what happened to him on his deployment and things that he experiences in the fire department, and the mental health stuff that he went through, and seeing that like he's doing better was such a huge thing for me to see. This one man who's a firefighter now and who's a veteran did, incredible things for our country and for where he's serving now. To be able to see him go in front of millions of people and say, hey, like, this had a huge effect on me, and this is what it did to my life, and then I went and got help, and this is how it helped me, and this is how I'm still working through it. That's how we work on fixing this thing, is people like, he's willing to go out there and be like, hey, like, I got problems and I'm still working on them. Him and the guy that killed Bin Laden wrote a book together on how to work through this stuff.
Right.
That just came out. So, and that doesn't make like the trauma good, but we're going to experience trauma. We need to know how to deal with it well.
Right.
And that's part of getting rid of that stigma.
Sam, we're just scratching the surface on this entire thing. I sure hope we didn't scare you away. I'd like you to come back again next season. We'll talk again.
Absolutely.
We'll try and get Mark in on it too. Maybe we'll tell him we're going out for donuts or coffee or
ice
cream.
They have one of those cool editing buttons for Mark.
Do. We absolutely do.
Okay.
We could even do maybe a sound. By that time, I'll understand the editing process better.
Okay. Yeah, we'll give that a little time.
Yeah. Well, again, Sam Hess, appreciate it. I'm so happy that you've taken this platform, this mantle, that can honestly help us all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
All right.
Thank you.
We at the Can Report would like to thank Sam for such a candid interview. We would be remiss not to mention a couple things that Sam said or implied. First off, Sam's no dummy. He belittles himself a little bit, and that's just part of his nature. He currently sits as the number 1 person to be promoted off the next driver's list and scored number 2 on the lieutenant's promotional exam. He's been a paramedic for almost 11 years. Dummies can't accomplish that. When we plan out these interviews, there isn't a script, just a few notes to make sure we hit on all the topics. This topic obviously is huge, and we do hope to get Sam with Mark this time to come again soon. We would like to also share some of the resources Sam mentioned in the interview. Sam recommended the following books: Resilience by Eric Greitens, The Body Keeps the Score by Dr. Van de Kolk, and Daringly Great by Breanne Brown. Sam also mentions a couple of websites like peersupportfoundation.org, the IAFF.org/behavioral health. Those links will be in the show notes. That's our show this week. Again, this show doesn't rely just on me. I would like to thank my producer, Angie Beck, for knowing what buttons to push. Our original music was composed and performed by Caleb Martin. Ed and Agnes ran the cameras for us. I'm your host, Bill Beck. Until next time, get out there and have your voice heard.